Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Welcome to the beginning of our month of Pisces. Before we start with the whole month, I have to introduce the topics of this week. So, before we speak about each one of the dimensions, we have to understand what is a dimension and to understand the difference between a dimension, planes in the dimensions, the levels of dimensions, and the kingdoms in the dimensions, which are different things, but we usually mixed up them. Okay, so let's try to understand this. So first of all, let's understand what is a dimension. Dimension comes from the Latin di, which is two, means two, di, and mention, that is to measure, okay, measure things. So dimension is to measure something from 2 points of view, okay? That's a dimension. So from the observer and the observed, okay, that's a dimension. We usually make the mistake of taking a dimension as a dimensional plane or a dimensional level. A dimension is not a place, it's the measurement of a place. A dimension is not a place where you can go or from where you can come from. A dimension is the different perspectives of one place, of one being, or one object. So the thing that makes us know in which dimension we live in is when we can understand from where and how can we measure that thing. So here we have a sphere. In a sphere, we have one dimension, which is this line here. We have a second dimension here. So we have here one dimension, two dimensions, three dimensions. In our dimension, the third dimension, we will call this height, width, and depth. So why we are in the third dimension? Because simply we have a height, a width, and a depth. So as you see here, the dimensions are not about spiritual levels or stuff like that. A dimension is basically the measurement of a reality of an object. Now, as you see, a dimension is a measurement of something. It's not a level of different things. So every object can be measured in one dimension, in two dimensions, in three dimensions, in four dimensions, which means that everything that is measurable has different dimensions. And because the universe is something you can measure, this means that the whole universe has many dimensions. And that's why we are multidimensional beings. But not because the humans are multidimensional, because the universe itself is multidimensional. So what this means? That the other beings that are in different dimensions, that we think of them that are in other dimensions, they are not separate things from us. All the beings in the universe in different dimensions are just us being perceived from different dimensions. But it's only one. We are always in all the dimensions, but this one here is only seen and expressed in these three. And now let's try to understand this with a much more simple thing. Now let's go to this example. A house. Picture a house. Think about a tiny house in the middle of nowhere. So the house has a floor, has 4 walls, has a roof, has a door, some windows, and inside you have sofa, a bed, a kitchen. Okay, so a tiny house, normal house, with everything that you need for a house. The whole thing is called house. But what happened? You will see that the roof is facing the sky. The floor is facing the ground. The 4 walls are watching, one to the east, the other to the north, the other to the east, the other to the south, the other to the west. So 4 directions. The doors and the windows are places where you can see inside and see outside. The bed, sofa, everything can only see inside. So when you see this, these things, you will perceive the measurements of the house. So you have 3 meters to the roof, maybe. So the floor is never touching the roof. So also never seeing the sky. For the floor, everything will be darkness, watching down. For the roof, it will be the sky above, the only reality it sees. For one of the walls facing the east, all the reality that exists is only the east, because it's giving the back to the west. So it doesn't have any idea of what is happening there. For the bed, for the sofa, for the kitchen, everything is related to the inside. They don't know what's happening. And sometimes you have a portal, a door, or a window where you can go out and inside. All of them are watching in different dimensions. But even though they are still only one house. Think about it for a while. So now here we have the concept of what is a dimension. A dimension is only one thing measured in many directions. So, for example, this pen and myself, we are here in this physical aspect, okay? So I am here watching this reality, which is the physical one. But what I see is not seen by the other dimension, which is behind of me. So I am only watching the perception of this pen and myself from this point of view in that direction. So imagine that I am the wall of the east. If I am the wall of the east, I can see only the east. So I am seeing only this thing here. But the wall behind me in the west is able to see something different from this pen and myself. The wall in the west is looking in the time, for example. So the wall there is watching the time. So it doesn't see the pen. What the other wall is looking at is the history of this pen. It's only the history of this pen. So it sees the tree, the wood, the granite, everything that made this pen and everything that will happen to this pen. Okay, so that's what the other wall is looking at. So I am watching the space and the other wall is watching the time. Okay, so taking the example of the house, if I am the wall of the east, I will only see the dawn and always will see the dawn. So for me, from my point of view, the only thing that will exist is the sunrise. There is only sunrise. That's all that exists because it's the only thing that I see. So I am seeing the space. All that exists is just the sunrise. And the other side, the other wall, will only be able to see the sunset. So for the other wall, there's only sunset, nothing else, only time. So that's why we can only see a reality, believing that this is the only reality. And even though it doesn't mean that that's the only reality, that we only see the sunset, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist the sunrise. Okay, so as you have seen until now, I'm describing dimensions. I'm not describing concepts. I'm not describing spiritual levels, nothing. I'm just describing something very logic, which is if I build a house in one place with one wall facing the east and one wall facing the west, one wall will be only seeing the sunrise and the other wall will be only seeing the sunset. And that's it. It's basically like that. So that's a dimension. That's a perception of the house. Okay, so now we will add something more in this house. This metaphorical house that we have created for the dimensions will have now different levels, which means that we have, ¿cómo se dice sótano? I don't remember how do you say the room below the earth. Sótano. ¿Alguien se acuerda? Basement. Gracias. So, so in the house we have now a basement, first floor, and second floor. Okay, so we have these three different parts of the house now. So the structure is watching to each one of the directions as perfectly described before. But now we have three different places of the house. So now this same house, we have people that are living in the basement, that are living in the darkness. So they have the same directions, but they are living in that darkness. Then in the middle, we will have people, beings that are living the normal life in the first floor. And then we have in the second floor, these other beings that has much more light because they are higher, so they can see better the sunrise, the sunset, and because there are no plants covering like in the first floor, so they can see better beyond and have much more light during the day. So what this means? That in the same dimensions of a house, there are beings that lives in different planes of dimensions. So we have beings that are living in the lower vibration, other ones that are living in the normal vibration, and other ones that are in higher vibration, much more subtle. So now, speaking about the third dimension, we have people, humans, that live in the basement, people that live in the first floor, and people that live in the second floor. We all know for sure in our life people that live in the basement, that are the ones close to everything, that they don't want to see anything, that they cannot see the reality, and they are just grabbing the reality, the matter, attached to everything. Also, we see and we know people in the middle that are just living their lives and discovering the life, and everything's okay, but doesn't see beyond. And then we have people, we for sure know someone that is living in the second floor, that can see beyond, that can see better, that are living much more subtle, relaxed, with not much weight. And I am just describing the third dimension, as you see. Now we will add something more to this house. Rooms. We will add some rooms in the basement, some rooms in the first floor, and some rooms in the second floor. From these rooms, each person that lives in that room will have windows and doors. So through those windows, those people in their rooms will see different perceptions, perspectives of everything. So some people will see only the sunrise, some people will see only the sunset. So the rooms will be focused in one direction, one perspective. To these rooms, we will call it dimensional levels. So now imagine, for example, that in the second floor, you have in one room a spiritual person that can see the sunset. And can see the sunset. So it's a spiritual person that is following the light, is saying, there goes the light, but that person always see the sun set. In front, in the other room, we have a high master that can only see the sunrise. So it always see the beauty of the light coming to its face. Okay, so it's the light itself. So it can see the beauty, the everything. So the high master in this dimension, in this level of dimension, can go knock the door of the guy in front in the third dimension, in this level of dimension, opens and says, hey, the sun has risen. The day has begun. So the person could know that the light is coming, even if he cannot see it. And the master come back to its room. Okay, so can you picture maybe the idea of how is these people? Interconnection. Okay, so now the explanation of the first floor, because the second one is the one that we usually know, that is the high master is knocking the door and saying, is the day, it has become. In the first floor, the master is not willing to go and knock the door to the guy in front to tell them, hey, the sun has risen. and the guy that is in the other room, in the other level, has not the will to go and open the door to the master, okay, when they knocked. So both of them stays inside the rooms, but the master opens the door so the light from the window in the east can come, and the rays of light goes under the door of the guy in front. So the guy that is in the room facing the west can see the light going under the edge of the door on the ground. Okay, you can see the light in the edge, but will never open the door. So by this, it can say, "Oh, yes, it's day. I know it's day because there's a bit of light in the ground," but never open this door. And the other one never knocks the door. You see the difference between this? So now, from the point of view of the guys in the basement, so we have a room that is the level of the master of darkness. They have a tiny window to see the light coming from the sunrise. So this master says, okay, it's rising, it's the dawning, so it's time to wake up the others. But the others in the other room are like covered like this, and I don't want to wake up, like they want to sleep, all darkness around so they can sleep better. So these guys, the master of darkness that see the light, they open the door very quietly, and they go in the darkness and open the other door, not letting anyone know that they are coming in the room. They get inside the room and look from above the person that is sleeping, take a glass of water and pour it in the face of the person, and they said, it's already day, and they leave. So that's the way of the people living in the basement. So the people in the underground, in the how do you say, in the basement, we call that crisis. Okay, so we have seen now the dimensions of a house, the planes of a house, and the levels of a house in the different rooms. And now we have inside the rooms the realms of dimensions. And the realms of dimensions is how the different subjects and objects of the rooms perceive the dimensions of that room, of that level. So what I was saying is that in each room now we have in each room we have the different realms of dimension, and the different realms of dimensions are like, for example, having that in each room we have a stone, a plant, an animal, and a person. Okay, so in each room is living someone, is living a person. That every person has a plant, every person has a pet, a cat, a dog, a fish, whatever, and and every person has a stone. So every one of them has something different in the room, and each one of the objects or subjects that are living in the room perceives the reality in a different way. So, for example, in the basement, a pet can be a demon. In the first floor, a pet can be a dog, a cat, or in the second floor, it can be a dragon, it can be a fairy, something like that. But not in any room, not in all the rooms, in just some of them, okay, in some room. So, have you already drew? Have you already drew all this little house with all the things? Okay, so well, all of that, it doesn't exist. And I say that all that doesn't exist because all of that are just perceptions of only one dimension, which is the first dimension. So all of that only exists because the first one. So knowing this, that nothing really exists and everything is just a projection of a dot in the cosmos, doesn't take any power to the things that we just described, because all the things that we say now they doesn't exist are the potentials of the dot. So all the possibilities, all the things that we have described in the house, they wouldn't exist because of the dot. The dot is having the entire power, and it's so impossible for the dot to experience all of that that it needs to project itself to create the house in order to live its potential. The thing is that we as when we as humans start to discover that this reality is not the only one, and we open ourselves to see other realities, when we start to see the whole universe, how it exists, it's like, whoa, so many things and so many dimensions, and wow, so many things. And suddenly when we reach the last spot, we suddenly recognize that there's nothing, that really it doesn't exist. And we say, why it doesn't exist? I need to believe that this exists. And the reason why we do that is because as humans, we living in the third dimension are designed to believe that this pen is real. But from other point of view in other dimensions, this pen never really existed. It's something different. The existence of the pen is a perception of the third dimension. So when we project our point of view of the third dimension into the universe, we project the need of existence to give a purpose of existence. But that's only the point of view of this reality. Have you seen in Matrix, the movie, when the Oracle says to Neo, in order to bend the spoon, you have to know the absolute truth. And he asks, what is the truth? And she says that there is no spoon. So that's it. So this is what brings us to the first dimension. The first dimension is the acknowledging that the dot, the only reality that exists, is basically one only spot with two hemispheres called the alpha and the omega. So the alpha is the spot where everything emerges, and the omega is where everything ends. So what the alpha has to do in order to connect with the omega? It has to spin as much as possible in order to create an axis to communicate the alpha and the omega. El principio y el fin, the beginning and the end. So as faster is spin, it can show both sides in one place. So it doesn't matter how, if I spin faster and faster and faster my hand, it doesn't matter when I show the palm of my face, you will be also watching the back part. So in this constant spinning, is how the unity is able to perceive the different parts of itself, the different dimensions. So this is why the photons, the particles, the tiniest particles of the universe, they are just showing us an illusion. The illusion that everything is just the perception of one only spot spinning really fast. This is why everything is I am. So it doesn't matter in which floor you live in which room you live in, which pet or plant you have in your room of that house. The truth is that all of us, all of it is just an illusion of one spot moving really fast. This is why we are living a dream. The universe is like a dream. And the moment in which the people that are living in that house recognize that they don't exist, that we are just a projection of a dot, and we become the dot, we become the dreamers. And when we become dreamers is when we also become creators. The constant spinning is the dreamer willing to live its dream. So what is the energy that moves this? Is the infinite energy that creates the spinning. And we humans call this energy as love. So love is the infinite energy that allows the dreamer to create its dream, to live its dream, to build the house of its dreams. So the first dimension is not something that is outside and there are beings living there. The first dimension is the concept of understanding that we are all one, that we are dreamers, enjoying the ability to live the dream, the ability to live, to experience it, and feeling loved by it. And when we do so, we are connected to the essence and the basis of the first dimension.